so happy that I got to meet you and that I got to interview you, because I have not met before a Middle Eastern woman who is so familiar and willing to share about the strong feminine culture of the Middle Eastern world. And I think it's a treasure that you bring to us. So if you could start by just giving us a brief story. You're born in Tunisia, and then tell us how did you come to Europe?
I was born in Tunisia. I grew up there, and then already when I was a little girl, I was always dreaming about going to study at the Sorbonne in Paris. That was just a girl dream. And another reason why I also wanted to live, it's on one hand I loved this feminine world, but outside of that feminine world, it was not very funny for women outside, because you had to struggle so much. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna go to Europe, because at least there it's easier, because they had emancipation and they had all this stuff, so that I'm just gonna go there because my life will be easier. And then I went to Europe, and then in a way it was easier, but at a certain point I realized also, I started to appreciate the part of the Arab Muslim culture which I always thought looked at as a negative way. I never realized how precious it was to have this female closed space. I always thought I was always missing the common space where women, the female and the masculine, the feminine and the masculine could meet, like in Europe, because for us it was always separate. And then I wanted to meet, and so I always thought that the Arab Muslim culture was in a way retarded because we couldn't meet. And when I went to the West, I realized also that we are always only meeting the men, but the space where the female and the male were just apart was lost. And that's also, I realized, was not also very empowering. There is something lost in there, because I think it's very important to have these spaces where the masculine and the feminine can develop their identities away from each other, amongst their own space, and then to have a third space, like a hybrid space where they meet. And for me, the West, these two spaces were absent, and then I missed very much the feminine. And this is how I started doing this work actually in the West with women, because I missed spaces where women were only together, like I had in Tunisia. So I thought, I'm going to create space like that. This is how I started to work with women.
And what is it in the Arab Muslim culture that women know that you think Western women don't know, aside from being amongst themselves and having a strong sisterhood? What are the secrets that they know about the feminine?
I think one of the major secrets, at least for me, is to have the space where, as a woman, your sensuality and your sexuality is completely in a natural, relaxed way for yourself, just for yourself. It's so relaxing to have that. It's so naturally empowering. There is nothing, your sexuality is not manipulated and used and abused and in a way which is for the other, whether to sell a car or to sell a house or to sell clothes or to go into porno industry or whatsoever. It's purely something for you, and it's something where you can, in a very relaxed way, enjoy, play with, and enjoy with other women. It's so natural to be a woman, and it's very much anchored into the body. But also, it's also a space where, as a woman, you can explore that your vulnerability, your softness, your all these little specific vulnerable part where in Western culture you are always hiding. It's like at the outside world you have to be strong and you have to be powerful and you have to be emancipated and independent, but when you are into your wounds, like an animal, you have to withdraw on your own in a corner, and you have to lick your wounds until you are again on your feet, and then you go out. And then in Arab, like in Tunisia, I remember in the West, when I started living in Paris, I felt so lonely because I was crying by myself. In Tunisia, I would call a girlfriend and it's like, oh, I don't feel good. Oh, come over. And then we would call 2 or 3 or 4 other girls, and then we would just gather together to cry. We would have a crying moment together. That's so important because it makes you also strong as a woman, because why do you have to do it on your own? Who said that you have to go through these moments alone? And then I found this loneliness in the West. For me, it was like, it's like, no, I don't like this. This is not how it should be. So, and that sisterhood in Arab Muslim cultures, where no matter what you are going through, in sadness and happiness and sorrow and pain and joy, you always share. There is always a lot of sisters that you don't have to know intimately to just gather, because we have a social system which allows us, and that's very empowering. Because by not having that in the West, it's a big mutilation for women. You cut them from their life force. You cut them from their sisters.
And you also think that sisterhood has to do with the lack of competition. You talk about how in Arab Muslim cultures there is not competition between women.
I mean, there is competition, but there is always, we know that this competition is not normal, it's not natural, it should not exist. There are always women who are regulating amongst each other to make sure that this competition stops. We know, even if we compete, we know it's not okay to compete. Whether in Western culture, it's so normal to compete. It's like they don't even realize that it's not okay to do it, to behave this way, that it's not empowering for you and for other women to compete in such a way, that it's harmful to you and to other women to do this. At least for us, when we compete, we know it's not the right way. It's not, and also because we have women from different ages, which is absolutely a must. So women from different ages are always mixing together in these spaces. So the older women, they always regulate the space. So when they are the younger ones who are trying to be like a little bit like, ooh, the older ones, they say like, slow down. This is not how it should be. And also because we have such a physical culture and we share these spaces of dance, so that when you relate to a woman from the body, from the womb, from the dance, you have this physical, sensual intimacy. You don't compete with a woman anymore, because you go to another dimension. You connect with another woman from the heart, but also from the womb, from the sensuality, from the physicality. And in that connection, there is no space for competition. Absolutely not. The competition dissolves by itself.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things we experience a lot in the West.
Yes.
Women not helping each other.
No, are not only helping each other. It's they are putting each other down. That's very painful. Whether I remember like in Tunisia, a lot of women, even my mother and my grandmother, who absolutely did not agree with my lifestyle, but they would always say, I would support you no matter what, because your success is my success. So even we don't agree, and even we don't always, sometimes we even cut each other into the way, for example, the way I was emancipating and going, it's like for my mother, it's like no-go area. You are not allowed to do this. But still, if I would just maintain doing it, then there comes a point where, okay, I would support you no matter what, but just make sure. And also something else that we always learn from a very young age, when I emancipate, I must open the road for other women. Emancipating by myself alone, that's egocentric way. This is not, we are brought from a very young age into solidarity and into sisterhood. It means when you take off, make sure never forget your sisters. So there comes a moment where I'm going to support you to take off, but after you're going to support other women to take off. This has to be going on all the time. It means also mothers help each other a lot. For me, it was very shocking and very painful to see how hard it is for mothers. It's like you have to rely on the system, with kindergarten and with this, with that, but you cannot relate too much on other women because everybody's like, but there is no togetherness. You are a mother, I am a mother, we gather and then we help each other because then we can support each other because we know what we are talking about. It's a very lonely journey. Emancipation in the West is a very hard, harsh way. There is no, for me it's very painful. Like emancipating the European way has been so harsh, so harsh. There is no tenderness and no support and no caring each other and no helping each other and no opening the way for each other and no joy and no togetherness into crying, into joy, into no, there is always competition, and it's your problem. You are a mother, you have to arrange your business in such a way that you can make it, and if you are not, you didn't make it because you are not well organized, so just, it's very tough. It's a culture which is very tough for women. I think for us, it's very tough the way the men are treating us, but at least we have a space where we can recover softly, nicely, nourishing each other. But in the West, it's nothing, it's nowhere. The men are going their own way, but the women are also not there. So you are really on your own. It's very tough, it's harsh. So I can also understand that Western women, they become very masculine, they become very harsh, they become very hard. But by doing so, they cut themselves from their feminine, from their compassion, from their empathy, from their joy, from their sensuality. It's very painful to live this way. It's not a nice way to live. And in that sense, in that perspective, Arab Muslim culture is, the feminine is more nourished by the other feminine. And here not. Here the feminine have to become masculine because that's the only way to survive. And we don't want to survive this way. We want to stay anchored in our feminine. And our target on the long term is to bring the man into that space. Not to join them into the madness of the masculine. That's not interesting. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. But this is what's happening, thankfully, all over the world. And I love that you bring to the West the strength of the Arab Muslim feminine culture, because when we look at it, we think that the women in those cultures are very suppressed, but you are actually talking about within that sisterhood, they're extremely emancipated.
Yes.
So can you take us inside of that room and tell us what do these women know that we don't know? They know something about the feminine that we in the West don't know.
It's, by living in the West, that was also for me the biggest. There was a moment where I was a little bit like hopeless because I thought, my God, it's like a global virus. It's everywhere. There is no difference. It's just that it's like when I think in the West that they used to burn women because women were using the wisdom of the feminine and they were connecting on another dimension and calling them witches. I mean, how violent that could be. So all over the world, the saddest thing is the feminine has been everywhere oppressed and mutilated and aggressed. But on the other hand, what we should not forget is the masculine can abuse the feminine this way because the feminine is supporting the masculine in that abuse. And in that sense, Arab Muslim cultures, the abusive part which men have towards us is finding place because we as women are supporting the abusive part in the patriarchal system. And this we can see very clearly in Arab Muslim culture because we have the separation between the feminine and the masculine, and we can see how the feminine is supporting the masculine to suppress the feminine. But it's everywhere the same. What women they did in the West, they suppressed their own feminine by becoming too masculine. It's the same mechanism, but it's just working differently. I understand that this is a survival strategy. It's like for us, these women who are supporting the patriarchal, it's because then they get recognized by the patriarchal and they get allowed to play in the arena of the patriarchal. So also in the West, women adapted the masculine strategy because that was the only survival strategy to be able to enter the space of the masculine. Okay, we understand that. But on the other hand, what they did, they lost the feminine. We don't want to lose the feminine. So for us, it's taking longer, it's going slower, but we want to maintain our position. We don't want to adapt to them. It's out of the question because it's not interesting. We can learn the masculine qualities. We can be as good as men in that, but we want them to get into our space because they need that. It's not nice the way men live. It's not nice. They are disconnected from their emotions. They are disconnected from their vulnerability. They are all the time competing. They are working very hard. They are workaholic. They are not spending time with their families. They are not allowed to relax. I mean, they have a miserable life. They are in a position of power, but what kind of life is that? What kind of power is that? It's not nice to live like a man. So we have compassion with them as well. I am a mother of a son. My son is 11 years old. I don't want my son to live this way. So for me, bringing the feminine, it means also we want to bring the man into their feminine part. Not only for us, also for them. Because we want to meet. The masculine and the feminine need now to merge. They need to go like this, together. It's very important.
I think that's what's happening, thankfully, all over the world.
Yes.
And I think that the new feminine movement is very loving towards men.
Yes.
And I think that's the new thing, that we both work with goddesses, and I love that the people who work with us, they always say they get a better relationship with the masculine.
Yes.
They get a better relationship with men from being at a goddess school.
Yes.
I think that's big success.
But also, you asked me about in Tunisia, and you know, in Tunisia, what I really love is this. It's this. Women are just relaxed with their bodies. Mm-hmm. They are relaxed with their sensuality. They are relaxed with who they are. The body doesn't have to be perfect. They are not into this performance, this competition with themselves and with other women and all. They can just be. They are into being. And then what is nice for us is to take men into that space, because that's a very healing space. And it's also a very playful space. It's very playful. Also for us, sexuality is not such a big deal. You know, sexuality in Western culture and this whole emancipation thing, it became so political that it's not anymore something like natural. You know, it's so overloaded with so many political and economical and also kind of concept that it becomes so stressful to live your sexuality or sensuality as a woman, because you have to do it in a certain way that you are emancipated, and you have to think about, am I on top, am I underneath, if I do like this, am I emancipated? It's like, it becomes a headache, you know, whether in these feminine spaces, like I remember in Tunisia, women, they would gather and we would talk very freely in a playful way about sex, and it's like no big deal. It's natural. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's less good. But what matters at the end is that you feel good about yourself. Is that you feel good about your body. The interaction with the masculine, even if sometimes it's not very satisfying, it's something which outside of your feminine zone. It's an extra, but it doesn't determine your identity and your sexual identity as a woman. Whether I think in the Western culture, we are too much, our sensual sexual identity is too much dependent on the man, the way the men look at us, the way the man likes or dislike our body, the way the men think our body is beautiful or not, the way the men think that we are attractive sexually or not. We are always waiting for the recognition of the male. In Tunisia and a lot of Arab Muslim countries, we are not. We give it to ourselves and to each other. The man, he enters and he goes out, but we are not dependent on him. And I think this is one major empowering, but because it's also nicer for the man, because we don't have so much expectation from him, like make me feel good, you know. No, it's like I feel good and I'm gonna meet you and together we're gonna feel better. But it also takes away that performance thing in man, that he has to please me and he has to give it to me and he has to be. No, relax. I have that in me. I can even give it to you if you want, you know? You don't have to give it to me. I can give it to both of us. Just relax. And then I'm gonna just show you the way. And then the men, they just have to sit back, enjoy the show, laugh, and then we take them into that energy. And then for the men also, it's very relaxing because it's a very smooth, sensual, playful, and not this energy, or it's like it's like I have to touch her this way, and then I have to lick her, and I have to lick her clitoris, and I have to open like this, and to put a little bit of finger. Oh yes, and I should not forget the breast because then she gets even a little bit more excited. Oh yeah, and I should not also forget to kiss her here, and then it becomes like a kind of manual how you should follow the map to give women a pleasure. We don't need a manual. We know our bodies. We can give it to ourselves. Just relax, you know. I don't need you. I have the map in my body. And I think this is a very strong, empowering thing. I have my map. I can show him the way. He doesn't have to guide me. He doesn't have to worry about me. I know. And I'm going to take him with me. And I think this is a very relaxed way to have a sexual interaction. And also to not chase orgasm, to go like behind that. No, we play, we have fun, and we see where it goes. It's the feminine is a very relaxed way sexually. It's very flowing, it's very fluent, it's very like, it's like, and it makes the masculine relax.
And the feminine as well. The thing that I think has gone wrong in many Western culture is that this part of the woman has been associated with shame and guilt.
Yes.
So women in the West have sort of had two choices. Either you're like a virgin, the Virgin Mary, completely innocent, or you're like the slut. And women have had like a hard time navigating. And we were talking about during the course, with very feminine movements that here in the West women are afraid of being misunderstood as sexually manipulative or using their sexuality, and I think that has obviously made a lot of women suppress their sexuality. And for example, at work, when I talk to business women about, I say you have to include this part in your leadership. They're like, oh, what would happen if I did that? But I think that they would become more whole and more powerful and more centered. But I think that this whole shame thing, so that seems to not be in your culture. You're not ashamed of your sexuality.
You know, one of the big advantages about Muslim, I am also Muslim, and Muslim religion, sexuality is sacred. This is why celibacy is forbidden. Even like an imam or very religious man, they are always, it's recommended even that they have sex and that they enjoy sexuality because it's seen as a gift from God to the human being. So the more you enjoy sexuality, the more you worship God actually. So sexuality is sacred. And many people don't know it, but in the holy references of the Islam, like the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or into the Quran, etc., sexuality is encouraged, is open. The Prophet used to talk about it even in the debating in the mosque. If we look at like one of the big references is Imam al-Ghazali, which is one of the biggest religious sources into the interpretation of the texts. It's literally said, men are not allowed to have orgasm before women. They have to wait until the woman is satisfied. You should not approach a woman like a beast. You have to وَلَا تَقْرَبُوهَا كَيْفَ الْبَهِيمَةِ. You should not approach her like a beast. You have to kiss her and tell her sweet words. So even in the religious context, it's encouraged that you have sex and that you make connection and that you kiss and that you have orgasm. So this is all part of the religious practice even. So for Muslims, sexuality is holy. Enjoying sex is holy. It's worshipping God. We don't have this shame into our bodies about sex. Absolutely not. It's empowering. It's holy. It's sacred. And this we find back, so there is no shame in that context. There is no religious shame which is put on us from that perspective, which makes a huge difference. And that's absolutely, I think, one of the most positive part about Muslim religion, which I appreciate very, very much, because also even in the Muslim tradition, in the Islam, divorce is allowed, but it's not, we say it makruh, like it's not recommended, but it's allowed. And in the Islam, a woman is allowed to go to the judge and to ask for divorce if she's sexually not satisfied. And there is no discussion of it. You also said this way, sexually, I'm not satisfied. You get a divorce. It's your birthright to step out of a marriage if you are sexually... Okay, a lot of women don't do that, but if we stick to the religion, it's allowed. It's permitted. That women don't use this right, it's their problem. But it is there.
So you would imagine that these men who experience these pleasured, peaceful women who invite them into their space, you would imagine that they would get a little bit more at peace. But if we look at the Middle Eastern culture from the outside, it seems quite violent.
Yes.
So how do you explain that connection?
Men in Arab Muslim culture, boys, they are with us bathing in the sensual energy until the age of 8, 10. After that, they are literally kicked out of our world and we never see them again. We see them again the night that we marry. They are completely fucked up. They are completely distorted. This is what we create. We kick them out of our world because they are becoming men. Where they are not, then they have to step out. They have no idea how to relate to us anymore. They are completely, this is why they are sexually obsessed. And this is why they are using sexuality to oppress us. Not all of them, thanks God, not all of them. So it depends also in which Arab Muslim culture you are. But if you look at the conservative part of it, I have no other word than to say that they are completely sexually psychopath. They're just fucked up because they are not with us. If they would have stayed with us, they wouldn't have been this way. The problem is that we kept that, but our men, the majority, not all of them, the majority of our men are completely distorted. But unfortunately, it's a minority of Arab Muslim men, and this minority is wonderful. They are supporting us, they are pushing us, they are concerned about us, they are helping us, they are sexually also open and satisfying us, but they are not the majority. They are this small. So we want to get this bigger. But in terms of sensuality and of erotic, etc., it's into their cells. They know how to relate to us. They know, but they are scared. Because we taught them that until the age of 10, they are with us in hammams in Turkish bath, they are with us dancing, they are all the time against our bodies, so the cells of their body knows.
But it's just afterwards that there's a problem. I mean,
Yes.
I'm very curious about this because I see what you talk about is a very strong feminine culture,
Yes,
the one that was lost in the West.
Yes.
So you have that, and at the same time, it seems like it's isolated and in closed cells and not really getting into society. And
Yes.
then you have a bunch of violent men outside.
yes, yes.
So how do we solve this?
So, by the way, these violent men, they still obey the feminine, but only the mother. The mother is holy. When their mother stands in front of them, I can assure you they pee in their pants. They really pee in their pants. So the feminine is still having an authority, that matriarchal still has an effect on them, but only the mother, not the wife, not the partner. Because this they didn't learn. They learned to be with the mother all these years. Even when they are kicked out of the feminine world, they are still in contact with their mother. So the authority or the influence of the mother is very strong on them, sometimes even too strong. That's the only feminine figure, authority they allow or influence. The rest, no, because the rest they never know. They never met. They never grew up like an adolescent, teenager with other girls, and they learn how to have a relationship and how to relate to a woman and how to grow in that. No, they're completely analphabet. But they know how to relate to the mothers. If the mother, she stands and she says no, I can assure you it's a no, and they wouldn't even discuss about that. When in Arab cultures, when we have the problem with our men and they don't listen, we go to their mothers. Then they listen. So they do listen, but not to the partners, but to the mothers.
So to create peace, we
Yes.
take a couple of mothers to help their sons
Yes.
to stop fighting.
Yes, and this is why, when I told you in the beginning, we are women creating that because the mothers are not educating the sons in that perspective. The mothers, they are allowing the sons to stay in that macho abusive behavior because that's seen as testosterone. The mothers didn't do a very good job with the masculine because they did not bring the feminine into the masculine. It's all a matter of education. This is why our mothers, this is our responsibility, is to educate the masculine so that the masculine respects the feminine. Not only respects the mother, because this they do, they respect absolutely their mothers, they have also to respect the partner, the wives. And this they didn't learn. Whether in Western culture they do. This is the positive part about Western emancipation, especially in North European culture, this egalitarian system where you respect the woman, you respect her rights, you respect her at work, you respect her at home, you respect her sexually. In the West, they learned the respect of the partner. And I think this is a very positive thing, especially in North European culture.
Yeah, so it seems like we can pick and choose something from
Yes.
other cultures and connect it. And I think that's what's happening
Yes.
right now. I
Yes.
mean, there's goddess schools and even god schools all
Yes.
over the world now,
Yes.
where men and women are learning a new approach to the masculine and feminine.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
a beautiful thing. What do you think is what is like? You know, you work with leadership as well.
Yes.
So you teach women to use the feminine in their leadership.
And also to integrate that in the body, because that came out also from because in my experience, I'm professor in gender, so I'm teaching all the time these empowering theories to my students and everything. But at a certain point, I realized this is all, sometimes it's like a kind of intellectual masturbation. It's like, okay, we know very well how it works, but it's going too slow. And then I thought we need to anchor that into the body, because otherwise we are all the time here, you know? We need to go down, because down, this is where we have to go. Women and men, not only women, huh? But women, if we women, because I think this is our responsibility as women, to show the way to men, to show them how to go safely to their belly and still function normally, to make the connection between this and this. And women in leadership, they have to teach to men that they can go to their belly, not only function from here. So they have to stop joining the men into this mental world, and they have to go down, because down there is a whole world of wisdom, which is, the wisdom is not only in the mind, the wisdom is only into the womb, but also into the belly. So when I work with women in leadership, is to go down there. So we work on intellectual concepts, and now these intellectual concepts, we're gonna feel them. We're gonna bring them down. We're gonna move with them, and we're gonna test them. Once you start moving that, how does it feel down there? Not only how does it think, how does it feel? And then by doing so, we anchor these intellectual, mental concepts of empowerment, we anchor them into the belly. And then we become whole, not only from here, it's there. And then by doing so, we can also show to the man that we can lead with alignment, and it's perfectly fine, and we are in charge, and we are doing a great job. And also for us as women, it's very essential, because by cutting ourselves from there, we are simply cutting ourselves from life force. It's just life force.
And our power.
Of course. And the world needs that at the moment. Also men.
Yeah.
We need that. It's the time has come now to go to the belly. We have been developing the mind, and it's wonderful. We should keep the mind, no problem. But the mind disconnected from the belly is madness. It takes the world into madness. It's not healthy. We need a healthy system. It means we need to be whole, to approach the world as a whole, and to make each other and the world as whole, masculine and feminine. And this is why also for me, I am a mother of a boy, of a son. I want my son to be able to be whole with his feminine and masculine qualities, and to stop pretending and neglecting the feminine to play the masculine. That's not nice to live like that. I don't wish for my son to live like that. It's very abusive. So also women, we have to, this is I think where we need to take the lead, to lead the world and the men towards that space, because the men don't know. They have been for centuries cut from there. But we as women, we are lucky because of motherhood and because of our womb, we are more in touch with that area. So then we can guide them and bring them safely to that space.